Good afternoon, everybody. We're live here with Nick van Renen, and we're going to talk retouching, advertising, commercial photography, etc. Now, Nick probably doesn't remember this, but I once went to Mike and his studio in, where was it? Four Ways, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I happened to be hanging around like a bad smell, and they were shooting something upstairs, and I just saw Nick was kind of doing this big thing with a mask and dragon and stuff, and I thought, sure, that's great. I didn't think of that, and I've kind of started using that the way that he was doing that in my own stuff. But I'm not gonna get into all the bits and pieces. That's what Nick is here for. So Nick, thanks very much for coming through today. I really appreciate it. I'm certainly looking forward to your presentation, and getting a bit more of a deeper insight into the whole retouching and from start to finish type process. So maybe we can start just by saying, what have you been doing during this lockdown process? Have you had stuff to do, or what's been happening?
Hey, Quentin. Firstly, thanks very much for the invite, and also just huge congratulations on what you've achieved with this group. I think it's kept a lot of people out of trouble for a good few weeks.
Yeah.
And it's kept us entertained, and it's opened our horizons to other photographers and all that. So I think, well done, man. You deserve a round of applause for that.
That's a pleasure.
Cool. So yeah, this lockdown, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of shoots that went right up to the beginning of lockdown, and sort of for the first 10 days or so, I was just retouching stuff. And then that got finished up, and I started twiddling my thumbs a bit. So, with being closed in these four walls, I decided to look at some old landscape shots that I'd taken on hikes, a few years ago. And I just started looking at different ways of editing those, and looking at the heroes on Instagram, seeing what they're doing, and trying to learn a few tricks and all that kind of stuff. And it was good fun, but it didn't do much for the cabin fever.
I'm sure. I suppose, I mean, I don't really know you, so what do you know about people? But I saw all the landscape stuff in the Drakensberg and that sort of thing, and I just I mean, that's fantastic. The sort of getting out there and enjoying the outdoors, but also being able to take fantastic landscapes. That must be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I had a baptism of fire the first time I went for a hike, because I decided to take a Nikon body and a 70-200 and a 14-24. So I probably had about 4.5-5 kgs of camera equipment, and you're supposed to go on a hike, a multi-day hike. You're only supposed to have about 13-14 kgs, and I was sitting over 20 kgs.
Sure.
So, but I mean, it's a great, I can't wait to get out there, and I want to sprint up into the berg.
Fantastic.
When we get out of this phase.
Absolutely. Yeah. So over to you. I think let's have a look at what you've got to show us today.
Cool. So I shall share my screen. Right. So, okay. So I was asked to just share, what I do, what my background is, on this platform. So let's get into that. Who am I? Good question. My name is Nick van Renen. I studied graphic design at the Port Elizabeth Technikon back in the day when they were still called Technikons. It gives the age away somewhat. It was a fantastic course. I mean, it's still going, but it's such a well-rounded course. You do a bit of illustration, ceramics, sculpture, painting, model building, all sorts of things, just to give you a very good grounding in the visual arts. And in my final year, my fourth year, I specialized in conceptual advertising, which then took me up to Joburg, which is where I am now. I started out as an art director in a couple of the ad agencies. My first talking about baptisms of fire was TBWA Hunt Lascaris as a junior.
Who was your creative director there?
Theo
Yeah.
Ferreira.
Yeah.
Paul Warner was there. Sue Anderson, Gareth Lessing, Fran Lucken.
Was Sandy and Tony
Sandy was there. Tony wasn't there.
That was baptism of fire, I have to say.
Sandy, I've never met a more scary woman in all my life. You know, you never knew whether to knock on the door or just go away.
100%.
And yeah, but she's chilled out a lot, and she's actually, I mean, she's a lovely lady. Yeah, then I went to Network BBDO and then Metropolitan Republic. And it was you know, through this time I was shooting a lot with Michael Lewis. I would always use Michael for the jobs that you couldn't screw up. You know, because when there was a lot on the line, you know, you have to call Michael. And I'd always enjoyed conceptual imagery, you know, and Michael was the guy to figure out how to put all of it together. And you know, we got along well, and you know, eventually he said to me, look, you know, you clearly love your photography, why don't you come and assist me? And I said, don't be crazy, I've finally got to a place where I can afford to pay my own rent. I don't want to be an assistant again. And 6 months went by, and it was a bit of a frustrating end to the year. And that Christmas holiday, I just said, okay, I'm going to give Michael a call. And that was that. I've got written down here, a miracle took place, because it certainly felt like a miracle at that time. Anyway, so I assisted Michael for probably about half a year, and then he said to me, "Well, let's form a partnership here. Let's approach the photographic industry from a different viewpoint. You've got your art directing agency background. You deal with a lot of visual media. Let's see if we can bring that into the scope of how we attack the photography scene." So yeah, we worked together for about 5.5 years, and yeah, then we went our own ways in 2015, I think 2014, can't remember. And I joined up with this amazing team of people from Lamppost. They're a production company here in Johannesburg, owned by Jody, and they've just got really good producers, makeup artists, stylists, photographers, obviously, and yeah, so agencies contact Lamppost, and they give us a shout when there's a job, when there's a brief. So anyway, what I'll talk to you guys about today is the advertising process. And as I said, it will start off with getting a call or an email from a producer at Lamppost with a brief. Either it's just a case of telling them how many days and hours it would take to shoot and retouch for a quote, or it's going into the agency and sitting down and actually getting a physical brief from a creative team. And then you go away and you think about it, and you come back with your plan of attack. Then you would, I won't go too much into the pre-production phase, because that's just mainly lots of boardroom meetings. But yeah, so various things get discussed at that level, you know, locations, wardrobe, styling, all that kind of stuff. Once that gets locked down, then you go off and you start to shoot. Then I'll talk a little bit about post-production, the retouching side of things, and then just generally just how you sort of live as a advertising photographer, how you prepare. And then quickly I'll just touch on Instagram and website. And then if there are any questions, I'm obviously more than welcome, more than happy to answer them at the end, or even if people have questions while I'm talking, go for it. As photographers, you know, we prefer freeballing rather than coming up with presentations. Anyway, so Quintin, let's get going here. So I'll share two campaigns. One is Sanlam and the other one will be Lexus. This particular one is for Sanlam. I don't know if you guys ever saw that campaign. It's basically a group of guys sitting around in a circle and they're having a conversation, but you start realizing that it's the same guy at different stages of his life. So it starts off with a young boy, and then like a teenager, and then a middle-aged guy, and it gets older and older and older. And they're just sitting around in a circle, talking to each other, reminiscing of, you know, things that they did when they were younger. And it's basically the whole idea is to impart wisdom, which is what Sanlam would be doing in this case. So the challenge, obviously, is it's one model, except for the little boy. How do we shoot that? You know, it's gonna have to be shot in stages. The lighting has to be, you know, consistent, you know, throughout all the shots. Eye line has to be, you know, correct. The interaction between the models has to, or the model has to be spot on to make it feel like it's, you know, one shot. This page here just shows that, you know, when you get a brief, it's not just, you know, you're not just holding your camera and shooting a landscape shot. There are billboards where you need, you know, extremely long, thin versions of the image. There's portrait aspects, you know, on the sides of buildings. So when you're shooting, you have to take all of that stuff into account. And, you know, so there's a lot to think about when you start approaching a campaign like this. Anyway, so let's get on to the shoot. So this guy, he's about, I'd say he's probably early 20s, mid 20s, perhaps. And he had to sit in prosthetic sessions, which took about 6 hours each time they put a face on him. So the shoot, it was a lengthy shoot. And in fact, it was the TV commercial was being shot at the same time, and we were shooting down in Cape Town at Renault Studios. TV guys were shooting in the church hall, no, the actual church, and we were shooting in the church hall. It used to be a church, it's now a studio. And TV can sort of, you know, take longer than expected. And what actually happened was I had to fly back the following weekend to go and carry on the shoot. So here's a shot of my setup. You can see there's a tape measure from the camera to the middle of the circle of chairs over there. You can see I've got lights on the side, light over camera, lights at the back there. That's to try and create this general sort of evenly lit scene. But now, obviously, you've got to remember the heights of all the lights, the positions of all the lights, the height of your camera, etc., etc. So it was quite a challenge to go from the one weekend, fly back to Joburg, and then come back again, set everything up exactly the same way, in exactly the same spot that you had it before to continue the shoot. But yeah, that's all the learnings from Michael Lewis stood me in good stead there. Obviously, your camera is going to be locked off for the entire shoot, and you'll see there's a softbox to the side here. There was another curveball that was thrown. They needed to do another setup at the same time to shoot some full-length portraits of the model. So that had to be catered for at the same time. So yeah, a lot going on, a lot to keep a lid on, a lot to think about. But yeah, that's sometimes that happens. This is just a shot of the agency creatives. You might recognize a couple of them, Quintin. Sitting around there, I was just checking lighting and positioning, eye line, how it would all work. And then we got going. And each model had to sit in all of the chairs, and look at a person in all the other chairs, because the agency wasn't sure where they would want the final positions of each person to be. So there was a heck of a lot of shooting for each model, and you had to kind of remember, all the different things that you wanted them to do for each position. It was almost like a checklist that you've got to create. Sitting back, sitting forward, looking right, looking left, laughing, looking sad, etc., etc., etc. You've got to go through all those things, shooting, just to you got all of it in the bank, so that when it comes to the retouch, you've got as many options as possible.
Yeah, I know some of the guys were talking about it in previous presentations. With regard shooting enough B-roll, for example, on if they're shooting film, because you just never know when you wish you had another 3-second something or other. So I suppose that
yes.
You've just got to shoot all the options, because last thing you want is everything is perfect except models should really have been looking left and not right, and in that last one, and where do you go with it? But I also wanted to ask you, so how big is your team when you are doing a shoot like this? Because obviously, there's a lot of things that are going on at the same time in the background, organizing this, that, and the other. How big is your team when you're on a shoot like that?
This particular one was an away shoot for me, so I couldn't fly down with a whole bunch of people. I've got a guy that I work with, Tatenda Chidora, who's literally the nicest person on the world, and also the very, very best assistant anyone could ask for. So Tatenda is, he's got his wits about him all the time. So he's so experienced that he can almost do, the job of 2 or 3 people. So for that particular shoot, I just took Tatenda with me. But if this was in Joburg, I may have had an extra 2 hands, just to help carry things and set things up. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll just quickly jump over to Photoshop to look at this the retouch on this. So that you would have remembered that shot was that scene was photographed in another location. I had to drop it into this hall, this beautiful hall with this wooden flooring. So that was also another challenge to get over. Let me just go back to Keynote here quickly, Quintin. I just want to show you something here. So that is obviously the location beforehand. You can see everything's, the verticals on straight, etc. Shooting the guys on paper roll, we needed to shoot them on paper roll to kind of create a studio feel, to get enough bounced light. But then dropping them onto the wooden floor in the other part of the building, we needed to shoot some plates of the chair to get reflections. So that's what we did over here.
Yeah, because obviously, if you shoot it on the floor, you've got that sort of warm color cast coming off of that. So there's the I suppose the challenge of that versus the needing a cleaner light, and that's why
yes.
the white paper roll.
Yeah, you just get nicer full light when you shoot on a white floor and background. You probably would have to push your shadows a lot harder if we'd shot that in a darker hall. But this mainly was just to show that you've got to think about things like the reflection of the chairs. It's far better to actually shoot it in camera than try and build it in post. Anyway, so I'll quickly jump back to Photoshop. this, just a disclaimer here. I can't remember why. I think I may have been busy with something else, but I didn't actually finish the retouching on this particular one. Paul Vermeulen did the final retouch on this. Paul's, I think, by far and away the best retoucher in South Africa. He's a world-class retoucher. He's worked on international campaigns for years. Anyway, so I called Paul and I said to the agency guys, just chill. It's Paul. You can relax. So this is, yeah, here we go. Just showing you the layer buildup of the guys being dropped in here. Do I need to zoom in a bit? Can you see? So that was the combination that the agency chose, and it can be quite a lengthy process doing selections. The agency has to choose their selections first, and then they present it to the client, and the client has to sign it off. And sometimes there are changes, and you've got to send through other options or something like that. So this was the signed off combination that we went with. Just a little bit of so yeah, I mean, basically I like to put color right up at the top, so that it's a grade, that affects all the layers. I don't like to grade each layer. I think it's far better to do a global grade right up at the top. Just a little bit of contrast over there, and you can see the detail and the eye lines. This guy looking at his younger self there, and this little chap looking at the old man over here.
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, and you can see the prosthetics. Yeah, I mean the prosthetics for each guy. I mean, this old guy. I mean, the model is sitting there for most of the day, just to get that look going. Anyway, so yeah, that's that particular one.
I see there, just thinking back to what you were saying about the reflection. So those chrome legs for those chairs, if you hadn't shot it on the wood, that would all have been white, and it would definitely have looked really out of place. So
yeah,
I suppose that comes with experience. The more things you shoot, the more you know that you've got to be looking for those sorts of things.
Yeah, you can sort of pick out the potential pitfalls, of doing something like this the wrong way, through, as you say, through experience, and yeah, luckily it was, a great retoucher that was on board for this particular job. Okay, so I will go back to Keynote. And let's look at the Lexus brief. So last year they wanted to shoot a whole bunch of Lexus vehicles with the sport package. I mean, I love cars, and I love shooting cars. So this was a dream job for me. This is just to show the brief. So basically, this is a PDF that got sent to me. What cars you're shooting, what are the colors, what's the shot list. So it's basically 2 exteriors for each car with details for each car. At this stage, you've got to look at it and go, okay, well, it's going to be X amount of days, X amount of hours per exterior shot, maybe fewer hours for the detail shots, and you got to work all of that out and come back to the agency and client with a plan for retouching. And if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it can be quite difficult to quote for retouching from the get-go. you don't want to blow the client out the water with this massive fee, and also you kind of need to cover yourself at the same time. So it can be a bit of a tap dance sometimes to get it right. Anyway, they wanted some not usual angles, not the sort of expected 3/4 fronts and 3/4 backs. They wanted to kind of come in a little bit closer, maybe slightly lower, slightly higher, just make it a little bit more dynamic. So this is what you see as a photographer. And yeah, then you get to the shoot, and you've got to keep all of this in mind when you start setting up. And that was just the art direction that they would employ on billboards and all the media.
Nick, at this stage in the process, do you give them options as far as I mean, obviously we're probably going to get to that, where you can either sort of try and light the things in the fewer individual shots as you can, versus focusing on one particular part of the car, shooting the hell out of that, lighting it beautifully, and then moving to the next. So, and I suppose that is that part of the process at this stage, or do you prefer to work a certain way and that's the way you do it?
Yeah, Quentin, I mean, I learned from the best, old Mr. Lewis. And, with the advent of digital, I remember Michael telling me, he almost figured it out himself. I think he was in a job in America, and he started figuring out that you lock your camera off, and then you can move lights around, and you can actually pinpoint and zone in on different aspects of the car and light it beautifully, and then put it all together at the end. And apparently the creative on the set was, freaking out a bit because they didn't know what he was doing. And he was like, look, I've got this idea that I want to try and work out, and just, bear with me. And so, yeah, that's how I shoot cars in studio, because you have the resources, and the capability to do it. I think in studio pack shots of cars, before the advent of digital, guys used to try and light it, in one go, and then that's it, you shoot it. But now, you can really, as you say, shoot the hell out of the car, lighting it in different ways. But I'll show you how I get around that. Let me just have a look here. Go to Photoshop again. Go to the next job. Okay, so I'll just show you quickly a build-up here of one of the shots. So this is just a clean background, and this is how I build it up. So this is a Lexus NX, I think, sort of a high 3/4 rear shot. I'm just going to start flicking through all the layers. So this is lighting in individual parts. You really can start, accentuate different pieces, and bring a lot of things out that you would not normally see. The naked eye probably wouldn't see all this stuff. But when you inspect it with the light, it's amazing, the things that you see on a vehicle. So yeah, that's pretty much the car. And then the color work starts at the top. A bit of glow there for the tail lights. And yeah, if you look at that, there probably are about 30 odd layers there. Sometimes it can go to 40, 50 layers for a car. It just depends. Jump back to Keynote. I think I was supposed to go here before I went to Photoshop. but I'll be better next time.
That's fine. So that was the color that got delivered.
Yeah, so that's how you you start setting up the shoot. You get your car in, you find your angle, and you shoot a base sort of lighting, kind of like just a general lighting like this, so that you can then start going in on it and accentuating the different pieces of the car. And sometimes I like lighting with a bit of LED. Creates a very beautiful effect. You can see the molding on the side of that car there from that LED stick like that.
It's also a really nice highlight in the center of that, where it's got that crisp line and then it sort of fades out. That's very cool.
Yeah. And then this particular one, I combined it with just continuous lighting from a tungsten. But then you've got to just be careful. Your white balance is vastly different. I don't worry too much about the white balance, because I knew that this car would be silver in the end, so I knew that I would be smacking the color right out of it. So it wasn't too much of a worry. But for cars, there are different ways to skin a cat. But so if you've got your camera locked off, you can play around within reason. I suppose you're on a deadline. You can't spend the whole day shooting one angle. You've got to move on. But as you progress, and the more you do it, you know what will work and what won't work.
Do you specify the color of car that you want? I mean, obviously, like a silver is really nice and neutral, but do you get times that it comes as red and you really don't need red?
Yeah, for this particular campaign, there was I think it was also a silver sedan. I can't remember exactly what the model name was, and they needed it yellow. And I know that yellow it's not quite metallic, and it's not quite like a flat yellow. So in the post of that particular car, it took quite a while to get that right. For a long time it was looking gold, and not the right sort of sporty yellow. And also the more you look at it, it's, you can't actually see it after a while. It's like you need to get a bit of perspective. You can't see the wood through the trees, kind of thing. So color work is it's super critical when it comes to cars, and it can get quite tricky. But luckily, this particular one was a silver one. In my portfolio, you can see the rest of the vehicles. There was blue, orange. I think there was a red one as well. But so that all just gets taken care of after the fact. And if you're shooting if they want the color that the car is, then it's a great place to start. So all right, I was supposed to go to Photoshop, but we've already done that. Then just in terms of being an advertising photographer, and when you've got a job going, Quintin, it's I don't like to. I'm a bit paranoid myself. I like to almost cover as many bases as I can before the shoot. And there's a couple of things that I use to do that. If you're shooting on location, on over here is an app called Sunseeker. It's the one on the left. That can actually show you the path of the sun through the sky. You can actually see it through your own camera on your phone. You just point your camera up in the sky, and you can actually follow the path of the sun. If you're into astrophotography, the one next to that's called Moonseeker. Same thing. You can plot the path of the moon. And then there's another one called Photo Pulls. This one's very cool. It's got like hyperfocal distant calculations and all sorts of sort of geographical things that you can almost plot where the height of the angle of the sun and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool, what these apps can do. And then of course, good old Google Earth. You can use Google Earth as well to find locations if you need a nice twisty road like that. Before going to the location, you can actually have a look at it first. In this one, I'm looking like a bit of a chop over here, but this was for an MTN campaign for the Springboks. They needed to drop the guys into a street scene in Tokyo, and it was the whole style of the shot was blue and sort of reddish pink light. They wanted it to feel sort of quite anime, and so I just thought, well, I'm not just going to rock up at this shoot and go for it. I need to test it out. So I do this quite often. I've got a whole bunch of like stupid pictures of myself. But yeah, I mean, this is just a part of the thing of being an advertising photographer. I mean, you're dealing with guys like this. You can't keep them waiting around while you figure out angles of lighting and power of the lighting, how to put the gel on, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I literally had, I think, probably like 3 to 5 minutes per player here, because their manager was breathing down my neck saying, okay, they've got to go. So, thank goodness I'd actually done a little test shoot.
Yeah, I think that for most people starting out in the photographic business, not really having dealt with corporates or even agencies, they have no idea that these guys are going to come in, they're going to stand there, and well, they're going to do hair and makeup, they're going to stand there, and they're going to bugger off. That's just the way it is. So you must have your ducks in a row, because otherwise,
absolutely,
it's done.
Yeah, you've got to know, where to put the lights, the height, the angle, the distance from the lights that you need to be, et cetera, et cetera. So you've got to be rocking and rolling by the time these guys step out of the makeup, the makeup parlor, because you are going to have like 5 minutes with them. Anyway, so those are just the working examples that I chose, Quintin. So I'll just go through a couple of other shots of things I've done in the past, just to show people, the scope of work that is required in advertising. It's not all just cars in studio and rugby players, on location. There are different things that you need to do. This was for console. I shot this little girl on a number of occasions. She's a great little character, and I just really loved the way that this shot turned out. It actually turned out better than I expected. I used a little LED panel, like an A4 sized LED panel here, to light up her face, and then just replaced it with the console jars. They're those solar jars, and it just creates sort of a nice sort of mood. This was for Dion Wired, who are unfortunately no longer, I believe.
Yeah.
This was for a Christmas campaign where the whole thing was about joy and people floating with joy, and it was a really fun campaign to do. To get people on kitchen stools and bar stools and little step ladders, and then photograph them on those, and then take them out in post production and put it all together. Slightly different take on car work. This was on the back of a TV campaign as well, and it was literally just lighting cars with those color LED sticks in quite a gritty environment. But I just really enjoyed the different feel that it got. Toyota, Fortuner, a lot of barrels on fire over here, and those barrels were all shot in a different place, not near the car like that. And they weren't all on fire as nicely as that. You had to shoot a whole bunch of fire and then drop it into the barrels, and then take the barrels, cut them out, and place them around the car in Photoshop. Gave it some heat haze to sort of all blend it together, as well as the nice sort of warm tone.
Was the car shot there as well, or was it in a different location?
No, the car was shot there.
Okay.
We had a big water bowser.
Yeah.
That wet down that entire old factory environment to get those reflections. The reflections in the car were, quite tricky. To use a huge scrum to
that's
control
why I
those.
asked. Those looked very clean compared to what's going on around on the roof.
Yeah. So, for an example like this kind of location, you don't just want to go in there with a polarizer, because that won't, it won't control all the reflections. So you would go in there with a big scrum, and you would shoot very flat sort of panels on the car with the scrum, and then you can blend the natural reflections into the scrum, and you can kind of control it like that. This was also a cool campaign. This was for Sanlam, the Cape Town Marathon. That light that you see there was actually an LED stick that I modified with color gel. So I just taped different pieces, different strips of color over this LED stick, and that is actually, it's all in camera. An assistant running from way back there, sort of waving this kind of wand, through the scene. It wasn't shot at the same time as the model, so you would shoot a whole bunch of light stick shots, and then you can choose the best one at the end, and then you shoot the model separately, and then you combine that all together in the end, so that you, as you were saying earlier, you've got a lot of B-roll, you've got a lot of control. You don't want to try and shoot that all in one, because invariably the model would be like blinking or pulling a stupid face or something like that when you've got like the perfect light stick moment,
Absolutely. That must have been a pretty big, that previous shot must have been a pretty big studio, because it's quite a long movement.
No, that's shot there.
Really?
That's shot on the street.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's shot early in the morning. Just at the bottom of that massive West Bank building in Cape Town, on the foreshore. So that assistant is standing about 30-40 meters down the road there. We've got traffic ops further down the road, and also behind us, locking off the street, and then telling us when we can shoot, and then you've got to use those little gaps to go for it. Same thing. And then also, sometimes you got to leave the tripod behind and just loosen things up a little bit. It can't all just be, heavily thought out stuff. You've got to sort of do much more sort of looser, easier kind of stuff as well, just with a really nice vibe. Just using nice lensing, get the bokeh going, the soft light, like wedding photography kind of stuff. And then another big aspect of advertising photography is shooting on TV sets. This is Casper and Your Fest, and this was for Nestle Gold Coffee. So I was literally stuck in between the DOP and a fridge. I think I had about 30 centimeters of space to get my camera in here and shoot while they were while they were actually rolling for the TV commercial, because guys like this, they don't like to redo things for the pesky photographer.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to mess people around like this. Try and get as much as you can while they're rolling film, as long as you know where to stand and to be very quiet and not have your shutter clicking away at crucial moments. You know, it's a cool way to shoot, but you've got to be a bit of a ninja on a TV film set, because you get shouted at a lot if you get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then just to show more scope, you know, one thing I also wanted to chat to you guys about is, as an advertising photographer, you kind of got to be a jack of all trades, because you never know what an ad agency is going to ask you to do. So you've got to be a bit of a car photographer, a bit of a food photographer sometimes, although, I mean, we've got guys like Curtis that really specialize in that. I kind of shy away from that because it's almost too specialist. But no, there are things that you've got to be able to shoot. You know, like this is a SA tourism campaign. You've got to be able to shoot sort of lifestyle, hotel industry stuff like this. And you've got to be a wildlife photographer as well. This was for Amarillo. Those elephants are not actually standing there. They were shot over, let's not say shot, photographed over the space of about 2 or 3 days up in Kapama near Hoedspruit. So this particular job, we were there for about 5 days, and we just needed this scene, this nice sunset shot, and it was just overcast the entire time we were there. And we were driving around in a game vehicle, looking for a location, and about to give up and just go home, and the sun just popped out for literally 5 minutes, and we stopped the vehicle, jumped out, and I managed to get a panorama and then put this together in post. So yeah, so that, you know, it's not just cars and models. You've got to be a wildlife person, architectural photographer, you know, the list goes on. And that's just one of the last things that I've put in here. That's something that I shot in the Drakensberg, and man, I want to go back there. So Instagram and websites. Being an advertising photographer, I think Instagram is not an advertising photographer's friend, because we shoot a lot of a little. You know, how do I say this? We shoot a lot of different things, and Instagram doesn't really like that. I think Instagram likes a lot of one thing on a profile. So, you know, when you see someone's profile and it's a hodgepodge of all different kind of things, it's kind of hard to make that impact. I think that someone that just shoots beautiful mountains can make. And I probably sound like I'm whining here.
No, but I hear what you're saying. It almost seems as though it's not curated. And I think what Instagram's sort of, I don't know, I suppose the claim to fame is the curated set of images, you know.
Yes.
So, I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, while I was looking at all these landscape things, I mean, I just saw this guy's got like 150,000 followers, and he's just got the same grade from the beginning till the end, and it's all the ochres, the earthy colors, and black and white, you know. And it's I find it mind blowing, you know, that it can be so hugely successful, you know, when the scope of what you see is you know, so narrow. But you know, it's just so impressive to see a lot of the same thing done so well, I think. Anyway, so Instagram, is alive and kicking. And for my websites, I use Squarespace. I find them just the templates that they've got are really, really cool for photography. And I think the best part of it is that it's just so simple. I mean, if I can put my website together, I promise you anybody can. It's just a shot of how it all works. You've got my advertising section on the right here, and then on the left, you've got all your images, and you can control however you want them to be, what you can edit them, pull them in, kick them out, change the order of them, etc., etc. It's just a really easy format, and it just looks really cool. So Quentin, I think that's pretty much it from my side. I don't know if there are any questions.
I'm just going to put us side to side over here. There we go. Yeah, so I think that, I've got a question from my side. So when it comes to, I suppose you for certain photographers, you look for a style, and that's why you hire them. But at the same time, if you're an agency and you're looking for a photographer that has a particular style, that's great. But I think that you need to have, in order to have a wider set of agencies that use you, you need to have a whole range of styles. Maybe you can give us a bit of input on that.
I think like yes and no. I think styles is an interesting one, because people say that you should sort of reinvent yourself quite consistently, but then again, if you've developed a style over a few years, then people sort of get to know you for that style, and if it works, if it's a nice look and feel, it's kind of hard to let it go if it's working. But on the other side of the coin, it is good to be able to be diverse and to be able to turn on different styles and switch others off, for different campaigns. So being versatile is definitely a strong point. If you can do it, it would allow you to tap into different markets and different sort of cultures, I suppose, photographic cultures.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking of specifically, if you look at the rugby players, very much studio lit, contrasty superhero style, versus the couple on the sort of balcony. Was it Tourism South Africa or something like that? Very different, feels and styles and that sort of thing. So I suppose, you mentioned it, and Mike in the comments mentioned it as well, being a jack of all trades and being good at all of them. You need to be able to, if a client comes to you and says, I want this, you need to be able to do that.
Wear a different hat. Yeah, no, very much so. I get called to do the heavily lit kind of thing, superhero thing, and then also, let's leave that aside now. We need to be completely natural light, just use beautiful lensing. So a good background, a good knowledge of photography is obviously essential if you go into a field like advertising, because it's different ad agencies, different creatives, they have different likes out there, and they want to shoot in a different way than the other guy, so to be able to chop and change with ease is definitely important.
Okay, so here's a difficult one. Best shoot, you don't have to mention clients, I suppose, especially for the next one. Best shoot, worst shoot, and most complicated shoot.
All right.
Careful now.
Best shoot. I would say being on the top of the Drakensberg, having taken a helicopter up from Cathedral Peak Hotel with all the camera gear, landing in the snow, at the top, and shooting a campaign. It was for Cell C. It was quite a while back. It was just, yeah, a magical experience, you know. I mean, that's off the top of my head. That's a knee-jerk reaction. Obviously, not thinking of
I didn't brief you on this, so
no. You know, also just traveling. I mean, going overseas. I mean, we going to do a shoot in Paris. You know, walking along the streets of Paris. You know, finding cool locations to do a shoot in Paris. Also, fantastic experience. My first time that I'd ever set foot out of the country, you know, on a professional basis. That was lovely. That was for Johnnie Walker. Worst shoot. Whew. Sure, Quintin.
you can pass on it if needs be.
I probably wiped it from my memory. Yeah, I can't actually put my finger on it, but I mean, I think there have been a couple of shoots where you just want to like almost threaten people that you're going to leave. You know, you're going to just go because it's just chaos, and you know, no one's pulling their weight, or it's just, you know, just not happening. Not many. I mean, I suppose maybe the worst shoot is probably like a boring shoot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe shooting like something, you know, that just doesn't excite me, I guess. I don't know. Most complicated shoot, I think, is probably the one that I showed you guys. Just there was just so much to think about. You know, so many angles of and so many responsibilities to sort of deliver. Yeah, that's probably the most complicated one.
Okay, well, that's awesome. So obviously I've asked all the good questions, and no one else has got any questions, so you've got it easy. There's no really hard questions here. In fact, here's one that that you might be able to answer. So let's say there is a photographer who is wanting to improve their retouching skills. What would you recommend would be the process to go from you know, just being able to put 2 or 3 layers in Photoshop together, you know, to being able to, you know, take on the car shoot, for example?
Quintin, I'm actually starting to learn a bit of CGI, so I can probably answer your question in how I'm approaching the CGI thing. I mean, I dabbled in CGI a few years ago, but now I'm sort of just trying to pick it up a little bit more seriously now. And wow, man, it's super complicated. I mean, if you thought Photoshop was complicated, like CGI is next level. I mean, there's just like menus in menus, and it goes crazy. So it's almost like a thing of like, you don't know where to start. So what I've been doing is I will sit with a project and inevitably hit a brick wall, and I don't know what to do. So then I'll just type it into Google or YouTube and say, how to do that particular piece, you know, and I'll watch about maybe 10 videos of different ways of how to do that. So, you know, if it was adjustment layers in Photoshop, you know, what on earth is an adjustment layer? You know, I see these guys talking about adjustment layers. You know, I would say just YouTube, there is everything. There's no shortage of knowledge on YouTube. You can find out how to do absolutely anything on YouTube. So I would just I would start grappling with the Photoshop, for instance, and I would start playing around, and I would then if I get stuck on a particular point, I would just YouTube it, and I promise you, within 20 minutes, half an hour, you'll have like quite a good understanding of how it works. So that's how I would probably start learning Photoshop.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You know, I don't know what we did before Google, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, but yeah, that's you know, the set of encyclopedias that your grandparents had or your parents had.
Yeah.
but it really is it's got an answer for everything. Okay, so there's no other questions that have come in. So I think we can wrap it up. If you want to go to the group afterwards and just field any questions that may come up once we shut it down. But I wanted to just say thank you very much for coming through and giving us the breakdown and that sort of thing. There's certainly things that, from my perspective, also starting off in the ad industry as an art director, going on shoots. And I mean, Michael was, he was the photographer that we used to use all the time as well. I think the first shoot that, and Mike's on here, so maybe he can answer this one. The first
Hello, Michael.
that I think we did together was for a bicycle saddle for the report tour for Standard Bank. Ever since then, been using him and you go to a shoot and you do this thing and you also mentioned where you said I'm just trying this new thing, and you're busy freaking out because that your creative directors told you to do one thing, or they've approved one thing, and now he's going to say no, but we're going to do this other thing, it's going to be fine, you'll see. So it's there's a lot that goes into it, and I think that the way that you've sort of rolled it out, and that has been fantastic, because it's certainly given a lot of insight into how that works. So Mike's just here. Let me just see what he says here. One of the problems with an advertising brief shoot is that you want to make that you have so many people involved who want to make it relevant input to the point where they can capsize the whole shoot's outcome. And as a photographer, you've got to manage this, because in the end, the success of the final visual rests in your head. So yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of time for him and his advice. So it's a good mentor on whoever's side, whether it's a photographer who's worked with him or an art director that's worked with him, etc. All on. So let's wrap it up. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And
pleasure, Quintin. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor, man. I'm so chuffed that I could get my face for radio on online. Absolutely.
We'll blur your face out, and we'll make sure that maybe we can get some comments on how we can retouch the
liquefy.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Have a good afternoon.
You too, man. Thanks a lot.
Cheers. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.